The jungle of Vera, nine hummed with alien life. Giant insects buzzed through the thick canopy, and phosphorescent fungi glowed faintly on the trunks of massive, twisting trees. It was a world hostile to most humans, a place where one careless step could mean venom, poison, or worse. But to Cale Donovan, a stranded human explorer, it was simply home now. His ship had gone down 3 weeks ago, leaving him with little more than a survival pack, a plasma knife, and his stubborn will to live. Cale had learned quickly which fruits to eat, which animals to avoid, and how to set snares with small, lizard-like creatures that darted across the forest floor. But what he hadn't expected was company. That came one evening, as he crouched by his campfire, cooking a thin strip of meat. He heard a faint rustling, too light for the predatory beasts of the jungle. He turned slowly, knife in hand, and his eyes caught movement near the roots of a thick tree. At first, he thought it was some kind of brightly colored rodent, but then it stood up on 2 legs. She was tiny, barely the height of his forearm, her body covered in iridescent lavender skin. Her eyes were enormous for her head, glowing faintly turquoise, and her delicate limbs trembled as she froze under his gaze. Cale blinked. What in the world? The little alien girl pressed her hands together, wide eyes locked on the strip of sizzling meat. He saw her throat bob as she swallowed, but her trembling only worsened. Cale slowly set his knife down. Hey, I'm not going to hurt you. The words meant nothing to her, of course. She flinched, squeaked something in a high-pitched language, and then, shocked Cale half to death, hid behind a mushroom stalk, peeking out nervously. That night, he didn't chase her. He left the cooked meat on a flat stone and went to sleep. When he woke at dawn, the meat was gone. The routine repeated over the next days. She would appear at the edges of his camp, always wary, always ready to bolt. She never came close when he was awake, but the food he left behind always vanished by morning. Then, on the 5th day, Cale decided to test something. Instead of leaving cooked meat, he placed one of the sweet fruits he had gathered. He pretended to sleep, but kept his eyes half open. Sure enough, the little alien crept out. She patted softly on bare feet, sniffed the fruit, and then hugged it tightly to her chest as if it were treasure. But before she could scurry away, her huge eyes flicked toward Cale. He didn't move. She inched closer, then tilted her head and squeaked. A sound somewhere between a chirp and a question. Cale's lips quirked. That's right. It's yours. His deep voice startled her so badly she toppled backward with a squeal. She scrambled up and darted into the trees, fruit clutched tightly. Cale sighed. Great. Now she's definitely going to think I'm a monster. He wasn't wrong. The truth was, the little alien girl did think he was a monster. In her people's stories, the tall ones were predators from beyond the stars. Giants who descended on worlds and swallowed entire villages. Parents frightened their children with tales of humans, whispering that if they wandered too far, the tall ones would pluck them up and devour them whole. So when she, Lyra the Kithari, had seen the human in her forest, she was certain her end had come. Yet, he hadn't eaten her. He left food. He didn't chase. It confused her, terrified her even more. Why would a predator feed its prey? Unless it was fattening her up, the thought made her shiver every time she licked sweet fruit from her fingers. Weeks passed. Cale grew thinner, but he noticed the alien girl, Lyra, though he didn't know her name yet, appear more often. Once, when he was too exhausted to hunt, he found an odd little gift left at the edge of camp, a cluster of glowing berries, piled neatly on a leaf. He had eyed them warily, half expecting poison. But when he saw her peeking from the branches, nervously waiting for him to eat, he chuckled. You're giving me food? She squeaked, pointed at the berries, and gestured insistently toward his mouth. Cale shook his head in disbelief. All right, little one. Let's see if I drop dead. He bit into one. Sweet, tangy, refreshing. He grinned. Not bad. To his surprise, she chirped happily, her tiny wings. He hadn't noticed them before, fluttering once in excitement before she darted away. For the first time since the crash, Cale laughed. Gradually, the fragile trust grew. She no longer waited until he slept. She would perch on a rock, nibbling fruit, watching him with wary fascination. Sometimes she mimicked his movements, tilting her head when he tilted his. One evening, he extended his hand. She froze, trembling. Easy, Cale said softly. Not gonna hurt you. After what felt like an eternity, she inched closer, sniffed his fingers, then tapped them lightly with her own tiny hand. The contact lasted only a heartbeat, but it was a bridge crossed. Lyra, she chirped suddenly, tapping her chest. Lyra. Cale blinked. Lyra? That your name? She chirped again, more confidently. Lyra. He smiled. Cale. He touched his chest. Cale. Her glowing eyes widened. Then she tried, stumbling over the unfamiliar sound. Cale. Cale chuckled. Close enough. Over the next days, she followed him more boldly, pointing out dangerous plants, guiding him to clean water, and even mimicking his fire-making motions. She seemed endlessly fascinated by his hands, how big and clumsy they were compared to her delicate fingers. And Cale? He couldn't help but marvel at her courage. For all her fear, she kept returning. And though she still sometimes looked at him as if half expecting to be eaten, she also trusted him. One night, a storm rolled through the jungle. The winds howled, rain poured in sheets, and Kale's makeshift shelter shuddered. In the middle of it, he heard frantic chirping. He rushed outside, scanning the downpour, only to see Lyra clinging to a branch, soaked and shivering. Lyra! He dashed forward, scooped her up. She squeaked in terror at first, and carried her into the shelter. She curled into a trembling ball in his hands, eyes squeezed shut. Easy, easy, Kale murmured, wrapping her gently in a strip of cloth. I've got you. Slowly, she peeked up at him. The fear in her eyes softened, replaced by something else. Something he could only describe as wonder. That night, she didn't hide in the trees. She curled up by his side, her tiny form radiating warmth against his chest. From then on, things changed. She stopped seeing him as a predator, and Kale stopped seeing her as just a curious forest creature. They were companions, two lonely survivors who had chosen each other. Lyra began teaching him words in her language, chirps and clicks that his clumsy mouth struggled with. He taught her simple English in return. Fire, water, friend. One evening, as they shared a roasted lizard, she tilted her head and whispered, almost shyly, Kale, not monster. He smiled. Took you long enough to figure that out. She laughed, a bright sound like wind chimes, and he realized it was the first time he'd heard her truly happy. But the jungle wasn't kind. One day, while Kale was gathering supplies, a predator struck, a massive scaled beast with jaws like a bear trap. Kale barely had time to draw his knife before it lunged. He slashed, ducked, but the creature's claws raked across his side. Pain flared hot. Then came a shrill cry, Lyra, darting from the trees. No. Kale! She leapt onto the beast's head, wings fluttering frantically, distracting it long enough for Kale to drive his knife deep into its throat. The monster collapsed with a final hiss. Kale dropped to his knees, clutching his wound. Lyra, you crazy little thing, he groaned. She landed beside him, tears shining in her huge eyes. Kale, friend. No, eat. Never eat. Despite the pain, Kale laughed weakly. Glad we cleared that up. She pressed her tiny hands against his wound, chanting something in her language. To his astonishment, a faint glow spread from her fingers, easing the bleeding. You can heal, he whispered. She only chirped softly, Kale safe. As weeks turned into months, their bond deepened. Kale repaired his transmitter with Lyra's help, scavenging rare minerals she guided him to. When a rescue ship finally broke through the atmosphere, Kale looked down at the tiny alien perched on his shoulder. You're coming with me, he said firmly. No way I'm leaving you here. Lyra blinked, then broke into a wide, glowing smile. Kale, not monster. Kale home. And as they boarded the ship together, Kale realized something unexpected. The galaxy might call her small, strange, even insignificant. But to him, this little alien girl had become the reason he survived. Proof that sometimes the greatest friendships came from the most unlikely encounters. Not prey, not predator, not monster, but family.